Negan has claimed his victim, and The Walking Dead is back after a very, very long, very painful hiatus. I'm Terry Schwartz. I'm joined by Jim Vejvoda, and we're going to get into full spoilers on The Walking Dead Season 7 premiere. I'm going to say that over and over again because we are live right now, so forgive any potential technical hiccups or anything that may come through this. We're also going to be keeping an eye out for your comments, so start posting them now if you have thoughts on the premiere. I'm sure you do because it seems like people were pretty divided. Again, full spoilers. We're going to be talking about the victims. So as we're live and people will be coming through into this video, I'll keep reminding people that we are talking about spoilers, but consider this your warning so far. Jim, I think we're probably on the more pro this episode side of the debate. What did you like about the Season 7 premiere? Okay,
I want to qualify that statement because Twitter has been a flutter, people, a flutter with strong opinions about this. I think the reason that I thought this episode wasn't as bad as everyone else seems to have thought is I feel like, what else did you expect this episode to be? First of all, we knew Negan was coming. We know what he brings with him. We knew somebody was going to die. We had speculated and heard rumblings. Maybe more than one person would die. We knew what he did in the comics. And we knew that the show, they hadn't been keeping it a secret that they were going to shake things up. So I feel like the reaction of people getting exactly what was promised is a little disconcerting to me. And look, I've had plenty of complaints about the show. You know, everyone is just hitting us up now saying, oh, it's just misery porn. And I'm already over that buzzword, but they're saying it's just misery porn. And I had felt that way about it too in the past. But I want to give the storytellers their due here and just be, let's see where they go with this. Now, let's see, the dictatorship kind of brought this on themselves, and now the dictatorship has been destroyed. And I know we've seen them in their peaks and valleys before, but I think that the episode broke the group. It broke them psychologically, and according to my Twitter stream, apparently it broke a lot of fandom too. Like, they're not happy with this.
So here's my thoughts, because I'm on the other end of the spectrum. Matt Fowler, who's our reviewer for The Walking Dead, gave this episode a 6.0, which is an okay. I would have gone lower. I probably would have gone like 5.5. And I think that the problem with this episode is simply that it was the cliffhanger, like it was the last 5-10 minutes of the season 6 finale extended into an hour plus long episode. And I found that spending as long as they did to build up to this big reveal of who the deaths were, when ultimately, like, we needed to see it. I think that if it had just opened with what ended up being Rick's flashback, which was about 20 minutes to a half an hour into this episode, which I think was, a little bit manipulative for the directors who know that people really are invested in this, to wait that long was not the right call. And then also to play it out the way they did. Like, I really liked Jeffrey Dean Morgan's Negan when we met him at the end of last season. He was such an overpowering force, especially compared to other villains that we've had. But I thought to have so much of this episode simply be him talking, like, other than Rick begging, please don't, about Carl, there weren't that many other characters who talked in this episode. To have it be so much of a Negan-focused, dialogue-heavy episode just took me out of it. And when we get, again, this is my requisite spoilers again, so we are going to be talking about the victims openly, but when Abraham died, I felt nothing. I felt absolutely nothing when he got hit. And I think that that is a huge failure on the part of the show.
Okay, but I got to stop you there because we have had, 6 months of analyzing who was going to get it. And we had guesstimated that the two most likely people would be Glenn and Abraham. So I feel like
you think that's a part of the viewer, not a fault of the show, knowing that that is
there's
exactly
a little bit of both, but
doing?
I think it is frankly kind of on us because we had been overanalyzing this for months. And so when they finally gave us exactly what we were expecting, of course it would, probably not have as much of an impact, poor choice of words, as we were expecting, or some were expecting. But I feel like the Negan, we only had 5 minutes of Negan in the last episode, and everyone, I think we even did a video about how he was the best thing in it. Now we get a full episode of really establishing who this guy is and he is in charge, and now it's almost like the opposite reaction to it. I feel like.
I think that that's part of the problem is everyone knew that this was going to be coming. Well, I'll take a step back. I think the reason why this was so effective in the comics is that people didn't know it was coming. It wasn't telegraphed beyond the fact that it was the issue 100 that came out, and everyone knew it was going to be a big thing that happened. I'm assuming if you're watching this that you're okay with knowing who died in the comics, but if not, spoiler warning for that, but it's Glenn who dies. And so, people knew the second that happened, which was several years ago, when it comes time for Negan, when Negan gets introduced, and you're right, Rick has built himself up for this, the Rick-tatorship, he definitely brought it upon himself. And the second half of season 6 established that and did a really good job saying Rick brought this upon the group, and it's a humbling experience for him. But we knew building up to that there would be a death. I think to press pause and know that people would spend the next 6 months speculating and to raise the bar so high to say you'll totally understand why we couldn't reveal the death then, why we had to wait until the premiere, and then you spend the entire hour-plus long episode dragging out who it's going to be. I just didn't feel like that decision was justified. I felt like it was a bit self-indulgent, the way that they spread everything out. And I agree with Matt Fowler, our reviewer's assessment, that when they spent so long doing these flashbacks for all the characters, and you have a flashback for Aaron, as much as I do like Aaron and his spaghetti dinners, you can't put that up against someone like Glenn or someone like Daryl or Carl, who's been there since the beginning, and expect not only Rick and the family that they've created, but also the viewer to care as much. And I think that the assumption that we all are as invested in these characters as the people making it are, was the failing on the part of the episode, because in dragging it out and continuing with the assumption that you would care as much if Sasha or Rosita or Aaron or Eugene or Abraham died as you would if it was Daryl or Michonne or Glenn or Maggie, that to me is just a mistake and a bad judgment call, because I think for me, ultimately, as I was sitting with this cliffhanger over the past 6 months, I was like, you know what, there are maybe 2 characters whose deaths I would actually care about. And the rest, it's just, characters who we've gotten to the point that, if you're on the show for a couple seasons, you're probably more likely to die than the others.
But that is also at this point, we're 7 seasons into The Walking Dead. It is a formula show. I get that, but the fact that they killed off one of the original characters, look, again, it happens in the comics, so you knew that, it was probably going to happen. So was I shocked to see that it was, spoilers, that it was Glenn? No, but I think the show needed to finally take out one of their main characters. They had to do it. I think there was no way this episode was going to air and not have people be upset about it. If they did kill off Eugene, or who's the spaghetti guy again?
Aaron.
Yeah. Our whole headline would be, boy, did they really wuss out on Walking Dead. If they killed off Daryl, the headline would have been, Walking Dead just killed its best character. If they killed off, Carl, everything, there was no way I think that they could win on this one. I really think.
That's fair.
Maybe if they had last season, you could have ended it apparently on a cliffhanger, but end it with Negan kills Abraham, and then Daryl throws a punch, and then you spend the rest of the season wondering, okay, who's number 2? What did
Daryl just do?
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think that they should have done the first kill, and then the surprise could have been coming back and being like, oh wait, Glenn is going to die, and then it has you wondering. The thing that made me feel the most in this episode was when it seemed like Rick was about to cut off either Carl's arm or his own arm, which is a throwback to a plot point in the comics that it seemed like they weren't going to do. That had me on the edge of my seat. I think you're right. I think it ultimately was where they chose to have that cut.
Yeah.
And part of what it killed it for me, someone said stop saying hour plus long episode. It was an hour plus long with commercials, but 47 minutes long, which is about a normal episode length without commercials. But to have it so that it did pick up with after that one kill, instead of having these multiple flashbacks reminding you all the characters who are on the line. They did that once with Rick having the memory flashbacks of all the characters, and then they did the eeny, meeny, miny, mo scene again, and then they finally did it. I thought the episode picked up a bit more once the kills happened. As terrible as that sounds, it was a bit of, torture porn or like violence porn.
Yeah, but I mean, the show
there,
has been that for 6 seasons. I mean, there's been more wailing and gnashing of teeth over what happened to 2 characters last night than the children that this show has killed off. We've done whole things about how badass Carol is. She killed a kid. Spoilers again for several seasons. We just had a kid get killed last season. We've seen so I feel like there's this sort of oddly disproportionate outrage over The Walking Dead doing what The Walking Dead does, which is being a brutal show that does make you wonder what is kind of the point of this? Why? I've done conversations before where I was like, what is the point of the show? What is the end point? I think the reason why last night's episode worked more for me than it did for others was that I felt like they finally needed to kind of break the group's pride and break the dictatorship once and for all, and because they had been bullying people, they had been going into people's communities, they had been taking their stuff, and now they ran into a group that does that way better than they ever can, and it's frightening. And I was thinking as I was watching it, it's kind of like in a different universe, Negan and his crew are the stars of their show, and these are characters that just kind of walked in the way like we're watching it with Negan coming in. So in their mind, they're the good guys here. They were doing their thing. They were surviving. They are this sort of dark parallel to Rick's group. And, I think for a lot of people, it's probably shocking just to see the good guys really lose this time. But I'll say this, they have the rest of the season to really make sure that there is a point to what happened in this episode. If it really was misery for the sake of misery, then yeah, I think the show is really going to lose people and not have them come back. And I do feel like last night's episode was the excuse that a lot of people who wanted out of that show.
Oh, those people are going to be watching next week. Yeah. Everyone who said
some of them have to do it because they get paid to.
Now, I do have a question for you guys. You've been listening to us talk a lot. I'm curious, we lost 2 big characters, and a big thing discussing deaths on The Walking Dead is, are there safe characters on this show? So I'm curious, which characters do you think are safe, are unkillable on this show?
Spaghetti Man.
Let us know in the comments, and we'll talk a little bit about who we think they are, and then I'll read some of your comments. I currently think that Daryl is probably the most unkillable character on this show. I thought that if there was anyone that they really wanted to make it hurt a lot in this episode, they were gonna did they have the balls to kill Daryl? I mean,
he's the season 7 cliffhanger. Right? We do know they're coming back for season 8.
They did grab him. The Saviors now have him, but I think he's my biggest bet for the safest character on this show, simply because people do love him so much. He's in a show that a lot has been discussed about how there aren't technical stars on it, like breakout actors like Game of Thrones or something like that. I think Norman Reedus is the biggest.
Well, they own that. AMC owns that character outright. So, and he moves merch. So he's safe from that point. He's an investment on their part. The worst thing they could do to Daryl is 2 things. He's the one they end up cutting off the hand of.
Oh, that would be.
Or
he'd never even. Well, he could one-sided crossbow.
Or they cut his hair.
All right,
let's
see.
Norman Reedus without his Joan Jett hair, it wouldn't work the same.
Let's see. So some answers. People are agreeing about Daryl. Rick, Carl, and Michonne, says Matthew T.
We're getting Michonne's safe. I think they could get her at some point.
We're getting a lot of Rick, a lot of Carl. Let's see. A lot of Michonne and Carol. Why do you think that Michonne
I think Carol is toast.
You think,
here's my theory.
I want to know why you think Michonne isn't that safe, and then we'll get into Carol.
Because I think Denai has a lot of other things that she probably wants to do with her career. She's a playwright. She's in Marvel movies. I think she's got other irons in the fire, whatever that expression is. No, I think that would be, look, it's a horror thing. The minute you're in love or the minute you have sex with somebody, they're now toast. And
well, Glenn lasted pretty long, all things considered.
He did. Now, the reason why I don't think Carol is completely safe, and this is probably you could probably have a whole conversation on this.
Jay Rogers agrees with you, by the way. He says Carol's days are numbered.
Here's why. I need to do more research into Robert Kirkman, his own life, and where he's coming from with this. But I'm beginning to see the show as a rebuke, maybe that's too strong a word, but of some Christian themes. And I feel like every character in the show that has gotten religious or has had any sort of faith, they're all gone. They're all dead. Herschel, Carol now clutching the cross. I feel like there's a sort of no one is coming to save you is, I think, the point maybe of one of the points that Kirkman is trying to do with this show. And that, yes, you have, the dead will rise, but it's not going to be for, there's nothing good will come from it, unlike in, the religious narrative. So that's my crazy theory. I haven't had time to really formulate it, so don't jump on me yet. I got to work on this one. But I think there's something there to it. I think there's, I feel like that's why Carol is not safe. And you look, karma. Dictatorship, this is karma coming back at you, and
So let's talk a little bit about that idea, because that's definitely something that they hit home, if you will, and
Ouch.
consider this yet again another spoiler warning that we are talking about the season 7 premiere. We're talking openly about spoilers, so if you have not watched the episode yet, you're going to get spoiled here. We're talking about who died and who made it out. But yeah, I think that they definitely wanted to break. The point of this episode was to have Rick broken by the end of the episode. And I do think that it's interesting that it wasn't necessarily the 2 deaths that did it. Like
the arm scene, if they had gone through with the arm scene, that would have broken me, because I would have been like, okay, now you're really like, they could have done it to Rick, but having him do it to his own kid. And I really thought at one point they were going to go through with it.
I think that's what worked the most about that scene to me, because I did too. Is that it did seem like
we knew the deaths were coming, but would they actually go the hand route? Like, I think that to me would have been like, maybe my opinion on the episode would have shifted, and I would have been more negative if they actually did go through with the Carl thing. But I felt like at that point, anything, after you
what
just brain 2 characters, I mean, maybe he will.
Yeah, the 2 deaths didn't work for me as much. We've talked about that already.
You've had it in for Abraham ever since he ditched
Ever since he ditched Rosita, I did. I didn't feel anything, and then I just went, yay, so sorry, Abraham haters. Everyone who's saying all these kind things to me in the comments anyway, I'm sure you love that one. And I should say that is what I'm doing, staring at this phone. I'm looking at your comments, trying to chat with you guys. If you guys have thoughts or questions about the episode or things you want us to talk about, chime in there.
What's the first comment? Why is Jim on this and not Joshua or Eric?
They're both busy. No, I'm glad that you're here with me, especially since we did disagree on certain points of the episode.
And we did the season 6 cliffhanger conversation.
Yes.
So it is kind of we've come full circle now, Schwartzy. It's you and I.
We did. Well, I think something Ian McElhaney just said. Sorry if I mispronounced that.
McKellen.
Ian McKellen chiming in said Carl's hand equals Glenn's dumpster last season, basically alluding to the fact that that could be a tease of what's to come. There is a famous lost arm in the comics that has not happened yet on the show. That's all I'll say. And they definitely hinted.
Luke Skywalker hand moment.
Yeah, they definitely hinted very heavily at it, and that's honestly what surprised me a little bit about that scene with Carl last night. But I think what's so effective about that scene, going back to what we were talking about before, was Negan kept saying, like, that look in your eyes, Rick, that's why I'm doing this. I want to break you. I want to see you're broken. For all people complained about Andrew Lincoln's blubbering, I thought that was really effective, like his sobbing scene when you see he is broken. No. I thought that really worked. People love to make comments about their cry scenes, but I thought that was really organic. And seeing what comes next, not only how this has broken Rick, but how this has broken the group, with us knowing that season 7 is really going to open up the world. And a lot of people are talking about King Ezekiel. So excited to go to Kingdom. So excited to meet Ezekiel and Shiva. We know that a lot more areas are coming, and there are the opportunities for Rick's group to fracture.
Yeah. I mean, they've already broken up, like, Morgan and Carol off doing their thing. We're meeting these other folks out there. I think I think we just have to be patient and look. Patience, but also, I do get a lot of, and we're all guilty of it, but like audience entitlement. The story needs to do this, or it doesn't work in my book. And it's like, at the end of the day, we are responding to somebody else's choices in this story. And I think that let's just trust that maybe they know where they're going with this. Let's see what happens. But yeah, if it is just misery for the sake of misery, if there isn't going to be a larger narrative thematic point by the end of this season, then yeah, my opinion about this episode might change. But for right now, I felt like this episode did what it had to do, which was to finally
press the reset button a bit.
Well, yeah, it takes you right back to, and it's not like they haven't done this before. Like Rick went into his little zone after his wife died.
Is he going to see dead people this season?
Will the phone ring? Like, you know, so you know, I know that they've done this before, but there is a certain formula to all shows. All shows have it, and I think this one was really about finally showing them that you're not the only tough people that are out there, you know, and that you've more than met your match. And I mean, Negan is still around in the comics. So
we aren't going to get too deep into that conversation because that'll get into spoilers.
I do wonder how long he'll stick around.
I do want to say, Cameron Boer, you have won my favorite comment of this so far of what I've seen. He said, "The dumpster, when we needed it most, it vanished," which makes me laugh a lot. But I do want to talk again. Consider this your spoiler warning. We're talking about spoilers. Let's play a fun game with the emojis on here. I want to know. You know, we lost 2 characters. We lost Glenn. We lost Abraham. I want to know which character you will miss the most of the 2. So let's say thumbs up if you are going to miss Glenn the most, and heart if you're going to miss Abraham the most, because I can see those a lot easier than I can see your comments. Which for you?
Why does Abraham get the heart? Shouldn't he?
Because he's red,
Glenn
big red,
the,
big red. Which of the 2?
A ginger joke. That's nice.
So again, it's going to be thumbs up for Glenn. We're getting a lot of thumbs up right now.
Yeah,
I'm going to miss Glenn. Yeah. Are you Glenn as well?
Look, even Abraham, even the actor Michael Kudlitz, even he was like, I think his words were like, I knew my character's on borrowed time. You know, he also, spoiler, gets killed in the comics. So I think, I just, look, Glenn has been there since the beginning, and we've seen him go through so many horrible things.
Interesting note, he's the first original cast member since season 3 to die. Yeah. The first, like, season 1
And
crew.
you know what? They needed to do that. They had to finally show that nobody on the show was safe, unless you're Daryl Dixon.
Which we've determined.
AMC owns you outright, and you sell. Yeah, exactly.
It's like an overwhelmingly thumbs up for Glenn response right now. I agree, and I think that scene at the end,
R.I.P. Abraham,
too, for as manipulative as it might have been, it reminded me a little bit of the True Blood finale with everyone at the table in Alexandria, like when Negan says, "What did you imagine? Like, did you really think this would have a happy ending?" And then we see what that could have been with Glenn with his baby, and like maybe Sasha's pregnant there too, sitting next to Abraham. Like that did hurt, because you've talked a bit, and we haven't really gotten into it in this conversation, but like, what is the point of this show? Obviously, it's not moving towards a happy ending as much as these characters constantly go through the same cycle of find a sanctuary, make it safe, meet new villain or obstacle.
I feel like we've talked about this before, I feel like every place they go into, they end up destroying. You know, Alexandria, they were trying to live that happy life sitting at the table until Rick and his team showed up, and they were sort of like, we're just going to take it. And now they've met people who are even better at it. And I feel like I don't know.
Well, interesting. Chris Ayers says, anyone remember the foreshadowing of Glenn picking up the bat, which I do remember. That was, I guess, how was it? The beginning of, it was either halfway through season 4 or beginning of season 5 or 6. No, it was season 5 or 6. I lose track with all the half seasons, but that was. What were those? The people, the cannibals that they met at Terminus. Yeah, and he picked up the bat, and that was even when they did the scene when they were about to hit them over the trough. And what's interesting, I mean, they've been foreshadowing Negan coming for a while, and people, for all that were like pretty broken up and conflicted over last night's episode, it was a character we were really excited about. But what's interesting is that the creators, Greg Nicotero, said that this has been a plot twist 2 years in the making. They knew they wanted to have 2 deaths 2 years ago, which, you know, I think that a lot of that foreshadowing in the show was definitely intentional.
Would be up. Yes.
I'm
just saying, just right around the time renegotiation would be happening. I mean, I do think that maybe that goes back a little bit. I know it sounds like it was a cynical joke, but, you know, that may have been one of the reasons why at the end of last season we didn't know who got killed. There may have been behind the scenes reasons for that. Or maybe they just simply didn't have the cojones to commit to finally doing it. But no, I think it's we've known for a while that the show, once they brought in Negan, that it would be that it was going to take a very dark, very grim turn. So that's why I guess I'm a little just befuddled by the complete kind of backlash against the episode. Like, what did you guys think was going to happen in this episode?
See,
the guy with the baseball bat who kills people shows up and kills people.
To me, it was not that he killed people. To me, it was the way in which the show presented these reveals, I thought was done in a way that at a certain point it just became numbing. Like, it wasn't emotional to me. There have been a lot of comparisons to the Red Wedding, which if you don't know what that is, I'm not going to get into it. I don't want to get into another show's spoilers here, but that to me is a very emotional episode because it's moving towards an inevitable end that feels like they can break away at every moment. For this, we knew what they were locked into from the beginning, and they toyed with that idea constantly until they finally did give it away. But I think ultimately you're right. Like, they had the odds stacked against them here because of what this whole situation was inherently. I think that this is a Band-Aid that needed to be ripped off. One way or another, we needed to get past it and we needed to move forward. Yeah. I wish they'd ripped it off quicker.
Well,
it was
the
very
season 6
slow
cliffhanger, I think, really screwed them in a lot of ways because it did, there's no way you can come back to the start of this season and not have people still peeved about how they ended it on season 6 because emotionally you were worked up. We were both, everyone, you at home, you on Facebook, all of you. We were all waiting for that death to happen at the end of season 6, and there's a cathartic thing of finally, like, it's finally happened, and then they took that, they didn't do that, and you did feel manipulated, and so yeah, I guess I think maybe there was part of me that was glad that it just finally happened, like. Just I knew that they couldn't keep toying with me then at that point once they were dead. So maybe that's where people are saying, like, I didn't feel anything. It's like, no, I think you did. I think what happened was all the adrenaline finally stopped because, okay, it's over. It happened.
It's over, it's done.
Like, I think that's some of it. So I think maybe don't mistake feeling a sense of, okay, it's done, with I don't feel anything.
So John Palmer says, can they kill Carl already? John, clearly you were not here for our discussion earlier on who the safest characters were because a lot of people are nominating Carl. Now, I will say now that we got past...
They'll just pick him off piece by piece.
Oh, like what they promised to do with Daryl. I mean, that's a big cliffhanger that we need to... We'll figure out what they're doing sooner rather than later.
Holy crap, that would be horrible.
Bob Smoke says Negan killing Glenn was canon. It is interesting. Like, there was a question of whether they would do it or not. Stephen Yeun said on Talking Dead that he didn't want that to go to another character. For all that he knew, it was a bad thing to happen to him eventually. He didn't want that to happen. I actually did a comparison between the comics and the TV show, and it's interesting that for all that they added an extra character to die, basically what they took with Abraham was the first half of Glenn's death in the comics, and what they did once like Glenn actually got hit and his eye popped out, that was like his second half of the death. So it is interesting how that came mostly from the comics. Now we aren't going to keep going for too much longer, but I do want to briefly talk about how there are some good things yet to come this season. For all that this is like a really harrowing and hard to watch premiere, whether you loved it or did not love it, there is more yet to come. Negan pieced out. I personally doubt we're going to see him next episode. I think there might be a brief lull, but that was really fun. Before, it was nice seeing all the emojis popping up. So I'm going to do that again. I'm going to say, if you are most excited for the inevitable further confrontation with Negan, I want you to do thumbs up for that. Or if you're most excited for the introduction of King Ezekiel, which is going to be coming sooner rather than later.
Cat emoji.
And yeah, if there's a cat emoji, I'd do the heart because that also means we're going to get to meet Shiva. Now, I picked those two things because I think they're the two most exciting things that are on our horizon, right? Yeah. King Ezekiel especially, we're getting a lot of thumbs up. So a lot of people are excited about Negan. I mean, it's inevitable, right? They're going to have to face off with Negan even though Negan has broken them. I feel like maybe that's jumping the gun a little bit right now, considering, or jumping having the bat, considering Rick was just broken. But I feel like a big part of this season 7 journey is going to be the group building back up and getting allies, maybe in the form of Ezekiel, to face off against Negan and take down this big bad. But which are you more excited for, Jim, of the exciting things on the horizon for The Walking Dead?
I mean, I'm more curious to see how do you pull off having a tiger on a show. This is the most comic booky thing that they've done
Shiva.
so far. I mean, I would actually pick a third option.
We got some cat emojis from Eli Timberlake
good.
Jr. Thank you, Eli.
I would actually pick a third option. I'm curious to see what does this mean for Daryl. How does the rest of the group respond to Daryl?
Smiley faces for if you're excited to find out what happens to Daryl. How about that?
Well, just like what does that mean for the group? Will Maggie ever look at him the same way again? Like the amount of pain that his character must feel now, you know? Because it's kind of his fault. I'm
really excited to meet Ezekiel. I mean, this is like a really powerful character, and I loved that reveal at Comic-Con too. I remember we were doing like all Norman Reedus was doing all these interviews at Comic-Con a couple of years ago, and he didn't even really know about Shiva then. I remember that happened, and he was like, "Wait, there's a tiger? Like, Galen Hurd, can we have a tiger?" And now you're right, it is the most comic booky thing.
How much does the CG tiger cost?
I don't know. Probably cheaper than having an actual tiger on the show. So, yeah. But I think that it's going to be really interesting for all that we're getting this incredibly powerful villain. A lot of people talking about, Negan is an incredible villain on the show, and certainly the most worthy foe to the Rick-tatorship this whole time. Like Ezekiel is a really interesting good guy, and to see All Out War, a lot of people saying, I want to see the war, I want to see the war, like to see this war against Negan. I know, I think it's going to be really powerful, and that to me is the biggest justification for having the premiere be this long, drawn out, painful, hard to watch loss of 2 major characters and almost a limb. That, to me, that's the best justification for it.
I'm curious to see, what they're going to do with the rest of the season with these new characters, these other communities. I'm drawing a blank. The ones that look like LARPers. Are those Ezekiel's people? Remember they were going around
yeah, from the kingdom.
Yeah, they got to work on their outfits. That's kind of stupid.
I mean, I want to catch up with Morgan and Carol.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. I'm kind of curious to see, like, Morgan now, like, seeing the kind of people you're going up against, your whole turn the other cheek thing ain't gonna work
Well,
now.
Chris Winning predicts When Shiva Meets Lucille, and now that's a rom-com I want to see. And Stephen Eloisa predicts the first half of the season will most likely be the communities coming together, and there won't be any assault on the Saviors until at least the second half of the season. Still can't wait. Now, I'm curious, there's been a big build-up to Negan, and I don't want to get too much into comic spoilers, but do you think that Negan will be a character who is primarily just a season 7 villain, or do you think that he's going to be someone who stretches on past it?
I think, look, didn't the governor get multiple seasons? If the governor can get multiple seasons, so can Negan. I mean, I think it would be interesting if you took this character that everyone hates right now. He's worse than Ramsay Bolton and Joffrey at this point. Like, you take this character and then he sticks around. And maybe you have to work with this guy. Maybe there are things begrudgingly you start to like about him. I think that would be challenging and interesting dramatic territory to take the show. Whether or not they'll actually do it, I don't know. I think at the end of the day, it's still about Rick and his son. But I don't think they'll kill him off season 7. I really think they're gonna Walking Dead, if there's one thing they do, it's drag things out. So I think Negan's gonna be sticking around for a while.
I definitely agree with the previous assessment about this half the season. I mean, I think after the deaths, we're gonna have to see a humbled Rick. We're gonna have to see a broken Rick, and what comes out of that, like for everyone to see their leader very emasculated in front of everyone else. Yeah. But I do think it's gonna be about these communities coming together, and I do think the second half of the season will be the build up to All Out War. Now, whether we get that before the end of season 7 or if that's the big season 8 storyline remains to be seen.
Does Rick get his own like awesome killer pet? Like if the other guy's got a tiger, does this mean season
Carl.
8, will he get like a giant bear?
Carl is I think, his equivalent of like an awesome killer pet, in my own opinion. Carl has some cool stuff coming if they follow what's going on in the comics. Now, there was one comment, and I just lost it. It was a good one. This will be our last talking point before we wrap up. Again, spoilers. Here's your warning. We're talking about everything that happened in the premiere. A lot of baseball, you know, between that and the Cubs. And also the reason I'm looking at the phone is I'm looking at your comments. So if you have any thoughts or feelings or questions about what we're talking about, please chime in, and hopefully I'll be able to spot it in here. Now I'm curious, the question again, I think it was someone named Joe. I'm sorry I missed it, but it was, do you think that there was too much gore, or do you think that the amount of gore in the episode was justified? Because I've seen people really pushing back at the gore and the amount of gore in this
I just
episode.
think at this point in a show where week in, week out, you're seeing brains splattered, is it the fact that it was finally non-zombies getting that, or good guy characters? Like, I feel like the gore was disturbing, but it was supposed to be disturbing. They don't want you to forget what happened. They didn't want to be antiseptic with how they present the death of these two characters, particularly Glenn, who is so beloved and was there from the beginning.
And that scene was taken almost verbatim from the comics, too.
And, you know, look, I think there was a point for that to be there. I think it's just seeing at the end when they pull out and you see them dragging the bodies away and you just see the two bloodstains in the ground. Like, you're going to remember those images. I was shocked that they showed so much smushed head as often as they did in the episode. I didn't think they would actually show that much. But, you know, I think complaining about gore in Walking Dead is like, you shouldn't be shocked at this point.
Right, I agree with that. I thought that there was a lot of gore, whether the show went too far. I don't think so, and I don't think comparing it to The Grove is necessarily fair, because I think that the deaths of Lizzie and Micah raised a lot of really interesting questions that this didn't necessarily, and that's like a conversation for a later point in time, but I think the deaths of those characters was a little bit different than what happened here. But
we've seen Carl have to kill his mom, and her body get eaten.
I think that The Walking
things.
Dead is a show that does sort of revel in its gore, and anytime you have Greg Nicotero directing an episode, you know you're in one that if it doesn't even have a lot of zombies, which this one did have a lot of zombies, it definitely is going to have a lot of gore. He's the guru of that.
Yeah.
I do think that the difference here was that they were two characters who were main characters and we cared about, and it did linger in a lot on those, but too far,
I don't know. I feel like the minute you say Walking Dead, you've gone too far. You're just egging them on.
Eric Bloom says, if it wasn't gory enough, someone would undoubtedly think they didn't die. Well, you know. The last time Stephen Yeun didn't do press for his exit, he came back. So maybe there's still hope for Glenn. That's a joke. I don't think.
And we didn't even talk about the gore of the hanging guy. And Rick jumps on him, and
well, you know, he wasn't one of the deaths that we were so hyped up about this
who mourns for Hanging Man? No one, apparently.
April Watkins agrees. That was awesome when Rick bit that guy's neck. I don't think he bit it.
No, I think he was just the weight of his body.
He pulled it. He ripped it right off. Now that was an absolute pleasure, you guys. Thanks for joining in to talk The Walking Dead with us. Very, very divisive, and decisive premiere. But you know, the Band-Aid has been ripped off. Negan is here to stay, at least for the time being, and we have lost two main characters, which was, you know, hard goodbyes.
One up for him.
But now some exciting things yet to come with King Ezekiel and Shiva in Kingdom, and a future confrontation with Negan that we all have to look forward to. So you definitely should make sure to keep it locked here at IGN for all our coverage of The Walking Dead. And stay tuned this week. We're going to have plenty more follow-up pieces about the premiere, interviews with the cast and creators. So make sure to check back in to IGN.com for that. Until then, thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, guys.